I'm Maureen Ballatori, and this is Spilled Salt, a podcast on the thrills and spills from the food, beverage, and agriculture industries. Today's guest is Murli Manohar, a serial entrepreneur and scientist in the biotech industry. He's experienced in spearheading innovation and promoting sustainable practices within biotechnology operations. Murli is the co-founder and CEO of a startup in the biotech space called CryoBio, just recently launched. He is also former co-founder of Ascribe Bioscience. Ascribe is a client of my firm, Agency 29, and they created a technology to revolutionize practices that farmers utilize to protect crops from pests and pathogens. That shifts their reliance on synthetic pesticides and allows them to utilize natural biochemicals. Murli has authored more than 30 peer-reviewed research papers, reviews, book chapters, and numerous patents. And what I love about this conversation today with Murli is how he talks about the grander landscape of biotechnology and its application in the agriculture industry. We also talk about the critical importance of building trust with farmers so that you don't sound like a snake oil salesman. And Murli shares his thoughts on some of the most critical issues impacting the biotechnology industry today. Enjoy the conversation. Hey, Murli, how are you?
Doing all right. How are you, Maureen?
Very good. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I'm so excited to talk about your career in the biotech industry.
It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I always love to start at the beginning. So tell us a little bit about your background leading up to the work that you're doing now.
Yeah, so I'm originally from India. I was born and brought up in a farming family early on. And I have seen ups and downs of small growers in India. In 1 year, when I was about 12 years old, that's when we usually grow potato and onion. That was major crop there. And 1 year, there was this major disease called late blight of potato, and that just devastated everything, right?
Oh, wow.
And back then, there was no safety net for growers in India. So my grandfather couldn't pay off the debt and everything. So there was no choice left. So they left agriculture for good at that point. My father started looking for jobs so they can continue to feed family. It was struggling for a couple of years. I ended up leaving schools and everything, supporting families there. But eventually, my father found a decent job, and that put us back in school. But that was
And
the
how old
moment.
were you at that time, Murli? How old were you?
I think either 11 or 12, something like that. Very early childhood. So, that was the moment, right? I felt kind of helpless, right? And I see my father, my grandfather sitting down in the room and talking about this. Now, how are we going to go by from here? And there was no way out, right? There was, you already have to pay your lenders. There was no government program that existed back then. So essentially, he left. And then 2 years we were struggling. And then my father found a job. My mother was very resilient. I could say that. I mean, she was amazing, resilient. Without her, probably we wouldn't have made it. And then she kept us saying that, no, I don't want you guys to go and do something else. Just go back to school, whatever it takes, go back to school. And that's when I realized, agriculture is what I want to do for the rest of my life because it is first that is absolutely needed. And second is very interesting. This whole globe needs some scientists like who can solve the agriculture problem. So I went to agriculture college. That's where I did my bachelor's. From there, India is different, right? You can't just apply in the college and you go. You have to go through this competition where it's usually 1,000 to 1, 10,000 to 1, depends on where you're going.
Wow.
So after my undergrad, that was relatively easy. But then I wanted to go to IIT, which is one of the best schools in India. And the competition is stiff, but I think I was lucky to get in one of those IIT. That's where I did more on agricultural biotechnology. And, the biotechnology was emerging in India at that point. So that was my motivation to come to US, because US was already doing a lot in biotechnology. So I came for PhD at Texas A&M University. After the PhD, I moved to Cornell University as a scientist. That's where I discovered, co-discovered, I should say, along with two other researchers here, a set of small molecules that would activate the plant defenses. And it was clear that it is unique in a sense that all the biopesticide exist today. And then we come up with this idea of founding Scribe Bioscience. So that was 2017. It took us almost 5 years getting through the field validation, the regulatory, the scaling, and everything. One thing I learned in a Scribe was, instead of going through the process that has been there for 50 plus years, field validation with the farmer is what you need. That's what you need for the momentum. And I learned that very quickly, right? So, and then I went out to farmers. Every places in the country you can imagine, South Dakota, North Dakota, not many people goes there. But I met many amazing farmers, and they're like, we can help you. I have, say, 100,000, not 100,000, 10,000 acres. I can give you an acre or two, and I can compare your technology with ours. And that was
possible. And you're talking about helping farmers transition from conventional pesticides to considering and testing a biopesticide for the first time, right? Many of them this is the first time that they're considering something like this. Biopesticides are still newer. And so what did that conversation look like in terms of convincing them? You mentioned like, oh, can I start with an acre? And I'm sure that this is where you're going, but how does it scale up from there for them to allow you to do more?
And that is a great point, Maureen, honestly. So biological or biopesticide or biostimulant, all this space, farmers are familiar about this for decades now. But they also do not believe it, right? There is a common word I hear when I go talk to farmers is snake oil, right? You have this companies, larger organization coming, telling them every day, here is something I have, this amazing cocktail that you apply on the my light turned off. Let me just turn it on. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, no, because I was not moving. It's a sensor, so I have to keep moving. And they're like, the people come to us, and they say, like, look, apply this, and boom, 20% yield boost, 30% yield boost, and no problem whatsoever. And they have fallen into that trap. And of course, a big larger organization coming to you and telling you that you would want to try. And they have tried, and they have wasted years on that. So anytime I go and say, hey, I have this new biopesticide that looks amazing. And they're like, okay, well, this is not the first time I hear about it. So I approach this differently, Maureen.
So before you continue and explain how your approach was different, I just want to clarify what you just explained. You're saying that the farmers have this feeling of biopesticides and biostimulants being snake oil because folks over the last decade or plus have come onto the farm and made all these promises that they couldn't follow through on, right? That weren't backed up. Is that the idea, right? That they didn't actually do what the salesperson said it was going to do, and that's why they felt it was snake oil, because you told me it was going to do this and it didn't?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. That's exactly correct, right? So you said, you promised that this is what's going to happen without a proper validation, right? You just want to go to the market fast, and you just told the farmers, like, this is an amazing thing. They tried, and like, they just fall flat. And I'm not saying all the biologicals are bad out there, but then, if many of those are just doing this, then a genuine person that goes to farmer and they have genuine technology that could help farmer, they're going to be skeptical. And in my case, they were. They told me that biological. So tell me more about it. And what I did is like, look, this is what it looked like in greenhouse. This is what it looked like in a small field trial we have done. I don't know what it's going to do in your field, but here is the data. Would you like to try? And that honesty perhaps was powerful. They're like, yeah, give me some so we can try.
Yep.
And I was like, yeah, try as you do it, and I'll come back when it's time to harvest or when it's time to when you see the disease. So and then we talk. And I went back, and many of them like, oh my God, this actually works. And some of them actually made video for us, like, yeah, I would love to help you guys here because you are onto something. And this was a real learning experience because I feel that we waste so much time testing in greenhouse in the with the contractors, and you develop this formulation, spend 5 years, and then you go to farmers. That's a real world situation, and you missed something. Now you spend this money, this time, regulatory and everything, and you miss something, right? So my approach now is, and perhaps other startup, like, yeah, develop a minimal you could, right? This is something work in greenhouse. Let's go out, right? Talk to farmers, and I'm sure if you're bringing some value to them, they'll give you a little plot to test in their field. That's
Yeah.
a powerful thing.
Yeah. So you think that you would have been able to gain more speed if you had not done the field trials and just gone from greenhouse to actual on-farm trials with a small plot of land for actual farms?
Definitely. Absolutely, right. The field trial you do in the small plots, the pilot scale and all those things.
Right.
Those are not real world. Those are close to real world, but then those are also very controlled, right?
Yes.
You can tell, yeah, some disease has reduced here, some disease has reduced there, but then if a small plot trials, how can you measure the yield, right? I mean, that's just
Right.
so variable to do all those things. So you could do all this for 3 years, and you are under square one. You know this technology works, but you don't have what value it brings to farmer, unless you have done 10 acres trial, which nobody does at the early scale. So go to the farmer, let them tell you that your technology actually works. And some farmer told me, I compare your technology with the best in class right here. And that's what the other one does, and this is what you do. And I like it what it does.
Yeah. So really a lot of we talk about this on the show a lot because it comes up a lot. The idea of building trust with farmers, right? And so I think it's particularly important in ag tech, anything related to ag tech, because it is still a developing segment, right? So I love that you're very focused on approaching those relationships with honesty, and the importance there is that honesty builds the trust, and the trust platform is where you need to be able to start, or they're going to boo you off the out of the barn, before you even get a chance to say hello. So that is it's always great to hear when we talk with folks on the show here, or just folks that I meet in the industry that are focused on that as a core component of the business, is the trust building.
Absolutely. There is no replacement to that. I mean, the sooner you do it as a startup, the better you would be, better off you would be. So I guess some people learn hard way. I perhaps also learned hard way because I didn't know this is the approach, but I tried and I felt like that's the right thing to do. And I would recommend any startup company developing technology for the farmer. Innovation doesn't happen in the lab. Innovation happen when you are fixing a problem that they're facing, right? So if that's your goal, that's your motto, then you're probably on the right track.
Yeah, right. I love it. So with respect to Ascribe Bioscience, you mentioned that came from your work at Cornell. You discovered this molecule. Just explain at a very high level for listeners exactly what Ascribe Bioscience is, and then tell us about a high point and a low point from your work at that company, and then we'll talk a little bit about what came next.
Yeah. So Scribe Bio, where we developed novel pesticides, and put it in the context, it's like vaccine to plants. And why I say it, the most of the technology by other biopesticide that you apply to the plants, it works through the plant system, but it also takes a lot of plant's energy, right? So if plant is putting all the energy to fight with the pathogen, they cannot produce the same yield. So what this one does differently, is like you proactively apply on the crops, and crop will sense it and they'll change something within, but not enough to divert their resources from normal growth to defense activism. They go by fine, but when the pathogen comes, now the plants are more kind of seen this molecule, so they will respond much faster. So when I say the vaccine to plants, Maureen, the context is exactly the same, right? You go to the pharmacy, you take the flu vaccine, and you go home, you are fine. But what you expect is when flu attacks you, then your body just responds faster, right? So that's what makes it unique, this molecule. And the quantity needed for this is an aspirin tablet is perhaps enough for 10 to 20 acres of land, right? So that little is so powerful, so effective. All crops need is a whiff of it. And then they activate the system. Plant goes by normally unless they see the pathogens.
And what crops does it work on?
And so this biomolecules in particular has evolved with the crops. It's found normally in the soil. So we haven't seen any crop it doesn't work on. It works on staple crops. It works on tree crops. It works on vegetables, fruits. It's very, very broad spectrum. And plant immune system is very simple. If you activate the couple of systems they have, the plants are protected against all sorts of pathogens, fungi, bacteria, virus, nematodes. And we have extensively tested this technology against multiple pathogens. But the initial focus was on fungi because that is the major pathogen in the root crops.
Would it have worked on the potato blight that killed the crop that your grandfather was working on?
Absolutely. And we have actually tried in potato as well. We worked with a couple of Cornell researchers who works on potatoes, and they provided us a field somewhere in the Slaterville, and we tested them. And it works on potatoes, on tomatoes. This pathogen actually impact both potato and tomato. So it does work.
That's wild. So what does that feel like to you? I mean, you're 11, 12 years old and you're going through this pretty tumultuous life as a result of, what happened to your family's agriculture plots. And now you've developed something that could have protected that you can make a significant impact on future generations. That must be a humbling moment in your mind to think about that.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely correct, Maureen. I think when we met the farmers who actually has these problems, and when they tell me that, wow, Murli, this technology actually works, this research actually works. I mean, that was more satisfying than anything else. And of course, as a founder, the people invest in your company, you're also thinking about the business at the time. But as a scientist, nothing more satisfying than that. And I always felt that once this technology is developed, we'll take it to India. And that's exactly what we have been doing. When I left, the last thing I did at Ascribe was setting rice trials in India. And rice is a major staple crops in India, but it's also suffering from major pathogens. And all they have is really, really nasty pesticides, the antibiotics, all those things they use. And those are not working. Farmers sometimes apply before harvest, and the carryover of pesticides is so large that they cannot export. It is such a
wow.
And last year, our trial was game changer. We did the recent Forbes article from Scribe that was covering our rice trials in India, and it did really well. So I'm very happy that it's not only helping U.S., it's also helping the developing country where need is more severe than the country like U.S.
Yes. Yeah. Kudos to you. That's remarkable.
Thank you.
So one more question about about Ascribe. I was talking to a friend recently about biopesticides, and that friend had a philosophy that it's generally not feasible to exclusively use biopesticides on crops at scale, and that a combination of biopesticides and conventional is typically the safest approach for a farmer. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think that's absolutely correct. I think about biopesticides that work through the plant system, right? The plant has to be healthy to activate the system and fight pathogens. If the infection is too heavy, plants are overwhelmed. The system is not working. So at that point, you need a conventional pesticide to keep that the extensive infection in control, so the plant can actively work and protect themselves. So I think that when you have the low to modest level of infection, these molecules are perfectly fine. But if you are getting to the very heavy level, that's when you need this combination. And then there is also angle of when you say scaling, perhaps as you got to produce these biomolecules, whether it's a microbe based, it's protein based, or peptide based. You got to produce it, right? And the margin for farmers is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's the critical things to think about. I mean, you have this amazing technology, but it costs $500 an acre. Then you don't have technology, right? So those two pieces that we learn very quickly, and we scale the technology to the level it becomes very affordable to growers. But then we also tested all the compatibilities for all these other pesticides, right? If the disease severity is too high, this technology alone cannot be sufficient. So you can mix with all these. We have tested that you can mix and apply together. No, so I totally agree with that. At least today, I don't know if any biopesticide works standalone against the severe infection.
Yeah, good to know. I think that's helpful to understand. So you just mentioned that you've left Ascribe Bioscience. So help us understand, that transition. Why did you leave there, and what are you working on now?
So last year at Ascribe, when we were growing up, I came from an academic background, so I knew a little about the business at that point. So we had Jay Farmer, who's our CEO now. He brought the business experience. Then we got Gabriel Bilmuth. He's our COO, has an MBA and business background. So last year, when we were done 3 years of trial, we worked with the farmers. We had regulatory in place. I saw that Gabriel and Jay can lead the next stage of the company, which is the commercialization. And at that point, I also learned that there are many more things can be done for the growers. So I started exploring new technology. Well, actually, I had this in my mind, and that's when I got in touch with my co-founder, Abe Pressman, and
but your co-founder for the new company.
New company, yeah.
Okay.
Co-founder for the new company, and we started working on this idea because we wanted to see whether this project is viable, right? That's the first thing you want to do. And the first thing you want to do is ask growers, well, does this problem exist? And I had this network of growers I could quickly tap into, and I can talk to them. And they said, yeah, this problem actually exists. And I don't approach them telling them what we are doing. We just go general, like, hey, what's going on in your life? What happened last year? What happened year before? And some people will say, well, this was a big problem last year. Some people say, no, this was not as a big problem last year. And then you talk to hundreds of those people, and you start seeing a trend. And that's what gives you confidence that this problem actually exists. So the low point there, Maureen, when I decided to leave Scribe, I was very excited. I was like, yeah, oh my God, this is what I have done. Now let's do something else. But when I left Scribe, I felt kind of lost. I was like, oh, this is the decision I made. I want to go through establishing another company. Then I go back and look what challenges I had in 2017, 18 when I was building Scribe. And it all just become more real, right? So I was like, oh, I was excited, but I was also very nervous, especially when you grow older, you have family, you have kids.
Yeah.
And then you start thinking about that. What if this fails? Right. So that was my low point. And really at some point I felt this is really something I want to do. And perhaps in a month or two, and I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And my wife, she was, if this is what you want to do, well, just try it. What's going to happen? If it fails, it fails. I mean, you tried. So because of her support, I picked myself up. And I think in 6 months, literally in 6 months, we raised our pre-seed money. We are in the incubator now. We are talking to farmers. We hired a new scientist and a technician. I feel that we are on the lightning speed to get this technology, this new technology that we are developing to farmer, hopefully testing in farms next year. So
That's very exciting.
Excited about the speed.
Yeah. Well, and kudos to your wife. I think that that concept of the fear and excitement of launching something new is something that is I can align with that too. I mean, I remember the moment I had an infant and a toddler at home, and I had decided to quit my full-time job and scale Agency 29 and really go all in on that idea. And I had this little card that I hung up behind my desk that said, "Proceed as if success is inevitable." And I needed that reminder. And I also needed the confidence and support of my husband to, when you need a little kick, a reminder that you can do it and you just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other, that it's so important to have people in your corner that can remind you to keep going. And it sounds like it's similar to how your mom was when you were a kid too, right? Talking about the importance of going back to school and, that idea of resilience. And it sounds like she instilled that value in you too, which is critical for an entrepreneur.
No, absolutely. Sometime, Maureen, I think perhaps that for you too, you are today, you are thinking, can I do this? And you'll go back and look, well, I did better than this. So coming from perhaps last in the class to a topper in all the future classes, I was like, yeah, I did that. So I usually get the strength from my past. Like this looks very challenging today, but then like, well, it was more challenging back then. I did it. Well, let's try this again. So I guess that's how I get the strength. Looking back and coming from a very humble background, struggle and all those things. I mean, that would have been, I still hear from people where I come from that where I come from there is still unheard of, right? And I think in a way I was lucky, I guess. Many people tried. But I really almost failed in my schools, right? I barely got into the crappiest college possible. But then when everything started getting better, and I was like, no, this is what I have to do. So started studying and then developed interest in it and came here. I guess those brings the strength today, so we can all keep going.
Yeah. It's about putting in the work, understanding where you want to go and putting in the work every day to take steps to get there. So with this new company, what can you share about what you'll be doing? Tell us what it's called. What's the timeline look like? When will you be launching? I understand you're talking to farmers. Talk a little bit about the new company.
Yeah, so the new company called CryoBio, and name talks itself. Cryo is ice, right? So it's a company that is developing a technology that fight frost in agriculture. So last 6 months or so, we have spoken to many growers in New York, Washington, India, Europe, and these are the most frost-prone area. And we have heard from that because of this climate change and weather irregularities, the both frequency and intensity of frost has increased. Right. So if you think about the low to modest frost, farmers in New York, for example, loses 10 to 20% of their produce on average. And these are high value crops like apples and grapes. So 10 to 20% is perhaps usual for them. But if the frost is in severe 4 degrees or 5 degrees, then that is the difference between losing or saving 90% of their produce. And 2023, I think that year is keep coming. Many growers have said that they lost 70% of their produce. Some said they lost 80% of their produce because, it's one night of frost in May that dipped to closer to, I guess, 3 to 5 degrees, give or take in the areas, and that's when the flowers are blooming.
Right.
It devastated it.
I remember that day vividly too, when that frost hit New York State in 2023. And because we're in this region and working in the industry, my LinkedIn feed and all my social feeds were my farmer friends lighting fires in the fields to try and keep the crops warm and blowing air to try and keep the air moving so that it didn't freeze the crops. But particularly it was exactly as you mentioned, apples and grapes that were most impacted and had a severe impact on crop that year.
Yeah, that was a bad year, and every technology you described there, Maureen, I think those still provide modest level of protection against the modest frost. But if you are getting in the severe range, first, those technologies are extremely expensive, prohibitively expensive for the small growers, the large growers with 400, 500 acre that can still afford it. But I think the installation is about $5,000 or so per acre, and it's several $100s to operate it overnight. And then somebody got to be in the field to turn on the machine, turn off the machine, because you want to save the fuel there. So it's inconvenient, prohibitively expensive, and still, with all those, provide a modest level of protection. You still lose your 10 to 20% of the produce.
Right. So what will your solution do? What's the goal?
So our solution is so we found a set of biomolecules that is naturally found in insects, fish, microbes that live in a cold region. So the idea is, if the fish is in the Antarctic region and it's very cold, they go in under and they keep their blood still liquid by releasing these biomolecules, right? So, and this eventually we found out these biomolecules are also present in plants, low quantity, but present in the plants. So what researcher has done is took these biomolecules, made a formulation, and apply on the plants. And they found that these biomolecules could reduce the ice crystal formation. That's essentially the frost damage is. And the power there is, if this biomolecules works in the field, we could actually provide the protection of 5 to 8 degrees centigrade of frost. That is essentially saying that we could control almost 100% of the frost, because the most of the frost is 3 to 5 degree range, and that's already very damaging. So what we are doing today is we are developing formulation in the lab. We want a lot more testing in the greenhouse before we go out test with the growers. In the meantime, we are also working with CMOs to scale the technology, right? Because as we said, if technology is not affordable for farmers, then it's worthless. So that's another thing we are doing, and also exploring the regulatory framework for this technology. This is a very natural molecule, already approved for the food additives in US and Europe, so we don't see any problem, but it still will take the time to get the approval.
Right. And so with those, you mentioned that you were asking very open-ended questions to the farmers to try and get an understanding of the challenges that they face in their farm operations. What are some of the other issues that you found in those conversations? I mean, frost, of course, is a huge issue, especially for specialty crops. But what are some of the other things that came up?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the pathogen. Some of the farmers said that some of the pathogen depend on which farmer you're talking to. So that is also a major problem. Some of the farmers has said, and I was not aware about this. So, for example, apple growers in New York has 500 acres. They got to request certain number of laborers for that season.
Right.
So they get, we get this 40 laborers, and the 40 laborers come from somewhere, other country. They got the visa and everything. At that point, you are committed to labor. They came to your farm, and then frost happened, or something happened. Not only frost, something happened. You lost 60, 70% of your produce. But you have committed to these laborers, and that is not covered under any insurance, you're still paying a fraction of the cost, because you can't just tell them go back. Right, we don't need you anymore. So some of the growers say that's an emerging problem for them, and that can become very expensive. See, so you have these trees, right? And the trees lost 70% of it. But 30% is still there. You still got to do the mowing, you still got to do the irrigation, you still got to apply everything. But you are applying those for 30% of the produce, not your 100%. So you're losing labor, you are losing produce, you are all those things. So that, I think that's inherent when some disaster like frost or a heavy pathogen, there's nothing you can do. And even though, say you cut out some trees, like now this is not, we can't use this tree. So yeah, now the area is smaller, but still you can send back those labors.
Right.
And one of the growers said that if we can't use them, we still have to pay 75% of what we have committed. So that's a big loss to them.
Yeah. Wow. That's a significant impact. Well, and that's going to get even more challenging too as we navigate the political landscape right now. What is that going to look like for, the future of bringing in workers to help with harvest? And so that, I think, remains to be seen. So what does the timeline look like in terms of the growth of CryoBio? You mentioned that you already raised your pre-seed, which is fantastic. What does your future timeline look like?
Yeah, so we just hired a scientist. We got into Boyce Thompson Institute, as they have lent us the lab, greenhouses, this all thing you need. This is a great place. I have been scientist here for a long time, and this is where I built a scribe. And since
at the Boyce Thompson Institute at Cornell, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And since I've been part of, I'm one of their own. So they also helped me with this new company, and they gave us a lab space, a greenhouse space, office space, and all those things. So I think I feel kind of lucky here, because it's a place where you can get everything you need. All the resources for plant science is there. All the best scientists there if you want to collaborate. So this is amazing. So they have been really, really helpful. So we just got into the lab, Maureen. We started working on the formulation. Our goal is to be ready for the field testing in spring 2026. And that's the reason we trying to connect with as many growers as possible, right? So I can understand their problem a bit better, what exactly they're facing in terms of frost, so we can develop the technology accordingly. And once we are ready, if we are ready early next year, we can test them in their field against what they're doing today.
Right.
And they can see side by side, like, yeah, this technology either works great or not work great. If it doesn't work great, then we have to go back into the lab and fix something, right? So this has been our approach. So any growers who wants to collaborate with us, we would be more than happy to tell them what we are doing and learn about their problems, and perhaps develop some sort of collaboration so we can test this in their field.
And you're primarily looking for specialty crop farmers, correct? Like grapes and apples.
For now, yeah. I think there is also a process of scaling, right? So early on, we see that the technology is going to be a bit expensive for the staple crops. We are seeing that in range of $100, maybe $200 per acre when we start. But we also see that when we scale up the process, we want to bring this to say $20 per acre eventually. So our beachhead customer is apple growers, grape growers in New York or Washington who were directly impacted by the frost.
Yep. Great. Love that. Okay, so let's talk about, I want to sort of go up a level into the industry as a whole, because I think of you as a person who knows a lot about the climate tech and the biotech industry at large. And so I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that from an industry perspective, a little less specific to your actual day-to-day work in the company itself. But so what are some of the issues that you think are most critical across the board in climate tech and biotech right now?
Yeah. So, this climate change and weather irregularities has a huge impact on across the board, right? the pathogens are gaining resistance. So as they gain resistance, we apply more pesticide, they gain resistance more. So this is a constant problem, and I think in row crop that has become one of the major problem. That some researcher, I think a few years ago, told me that when they develop transgenic line 15 years ago, that transgenic line would last 8 years. That long it takes for a pathogen to break through. Now it takes 2 to 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Right. And you develop a pesticide or a strong pesticide. I mean, you are basically killing the pathogen. That's how the pesticide works. And if you are killing, you are putting a lot of pressure because they got to survive too. So that's how they develop resistance. So the idea really is, and I think it also came in our conversation early, you do not use one pesticide or one group of pesticide. You mix. So the pathogen get pressure from all sides. So their chances of gaining resistance is much lower. Right. So that's the one thing that has becoming a huge problem. And that's the reason why the biotechnology industry has a heavy lift to do, because pesticide, maybe they are out today. I mean, we don't see that they will be gone in next 10, 20 years, but at some point they will become unusable because the pathogen becomes so resistant. Then those pesticides can't do anything. In Brazil today, Maureen, a pest called Asian soybean rust. It is so strong that there is no single pesticide work against them. It's a combination of 4, 6, 8 different pesticides to control that particular pest, and it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So the idea is you use this pest, but then also bring this the biopesticide. So they work through the plants, or they work through a different mode of action. So this pesticide have longer life than what they already have. So that is one of the major challenge. And of course, weather irregularities, drought is also becoming in the last 2 years in US, Midwest, those areas where the corn and soybean is being grown. The drought has been a major problem. Brazil, I also hear the same issues. In India, the drought was so bad last years. They only harvested half of their staple crops. I think wheat was impacted heavily, and the yield was reduced to essentially half of it. So, all these things, and biotechnology do really have solution. It takes time. It takes patience, right? Biotechnology is not easy. If we understand the need and we understand the science, then what we can do about it, there is always a way to help or develop something that can help farmers.
Yeah. But it sounds like what you're saying is that the solution is typically going to be for lack of a better word, a concoction, right? A mix of many solutions all compounded to get to the result that people are looking for, and not an all or nothing.
Yeah, there is no silver bullet today. There is no silver bullet for anything. If you move away from pathogen, you have drought. There is no single thing you do that save your crop from drought. You got to do multiple things. Same for the frost. Maybe what we are developing today is maybe by alone. Maybe it's not sufficient. Maybe we have to combine with something else. We'll find that out, and we are very open to that, right? So absolutely, in agriculture, there is no silver bullet. Perhaps we have to learn how to best use the resources exist, and you don't want to just combine 5 things on their full rate. You want to make sure that, because if you're bringing in biologicals, you also want to reduce the pesticide at the same point. Otherwise, what is the point, right?
Right,
you are getting the same pressure. So I think as a scientist, or the company scientific team, they also got to do a better job there to explain farmers that this is why you bring this new technology, so you can save this toxic chemical putting on your field, so you can extend the life of what pesticide is most important for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right.
I think that that scientific approach of hypothesis and bringing that to the farmer and being open to what the result is key, it sounds like, to the success of it, and also the fact that you are hyper aware of what the farmer needs, which is the economical benefit. They need to either be able to reduce their costs so that it's more affordable, ideally also improving sustainability or, impact on the environment, and or impact on output, right? And so increased yields and that sort of thing, which ultimately are generally, we're talking about when it comes down to reducing the cost for the farmer or increasing the yield, is about the economic impact that they're going to receive as a result. And so it's refreshing to hear you focused on that too, because there are some cases where I'll talk to an early stage startup, and sometimes it's just, especially with respect to regenerative agriculture, sometimes folks are like, well, the consumer is just going to have to pay more because it's going to cost the farmer more to farm it. And it's like, guys, that's not how this works. I mean, that's not the answer.
That's well said, Maureen. Farmers shouldn't pay for the green technology. Yes, green technology is good, but we also share the burden there, right? Otherwise, it will never be adopted.
Right? I agree.
Farmers need to see that, yes, they invested in premium technology is fine. If you're developing a premium technology, that's perfectly fine. But that should provide the value accordingly. They're not going to invest $200 more because that's green. No, that's not going to happen with farmers. They will invest $200 more if that provides equal value back to them. So it's always about return on investment. And given how small margin they work with, I mean, we don't expect them to take the most burden. It's for all of us to take the burden. Maybe if a company developing green technology, you subsidize them unless you figure out how to scale them, right? I mean, why would farmer want to spend more and get less? Right. ROI is the key here.
Yes. Well said. All right. Last question for you. What is next for the future of biotechnology and climate tech?
Yeah, there's a lot happening today. And I think answer there is, the biotechnology is very broad. It's a tool, right? It's a tool that you can use to solve any problem in agriculture or health tech or anywhere, right? But the tool should be used to solve the real problem. I think the success in agriculture is, as a scientist, I know the science, but I don't know the need. I can develop this amazing technology that I feel is amazing, but it doesn't do anything to the farmers. That doesn't mean anything. So I would think that the biotechnology or this new science, the climate tech that we are developing, should be focused on solving the real problem, the real need, not only for farmers, for everybody else. If that's the focus, and of course you are in that space, that's why you're focused there. And then you adapt science or your technology to solve that real need. I believe that's the key to success for at least for the ag tech founders.
Yeah. And it sounds simple, but it's an important reminder. Yeah. Great. Murli, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a great conversation. I love being able to hear more about your background and how Ascribe was created, and now the work that you're doing too for CryoBio. So just as a reminder for any of our listeners, if you are in a specialty crop, especially in New York or Washington, and you are facing frost issues, check out CryoBio, get in touch with Murli. He would love to talk with you about your business. Thanks again for joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Maureen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Spilled Salt. I'm your host, Maureen Ballatori. Spilled Salt is an Agency 29 production. Agency 29 is a brand-building firm for food, beverage, and agriculture brands. Learn more at agency29.com. For more information about the podcast, visit spilledsaltpodcast.com. Use that website to send me questions or recommendations for future guests. I always love hearing from you. Spilled Salt is available anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. Please like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.